Okay.
That's a smart fellow over there.
There we go.
I tell you, I don't remember any real losing of tempers in all the committee meetings we had. Do you, Joe?
No, I don't remember any of that at all. We had great committees. We had a great committee for the study committee, and as I recall, and as I said, I had never chaired a committee like that. I had a lot of fears about doing so, but we had good groups in there. We had good input. We had tremendous guidance by people who, I guess, were well experienced in church work, and we had people who really were not like me experienced in church work. And even when Wright came on the board, then he was not really experienced like, say, Bernard Robertson and Bishop Robertson. But we had good input from everybody, and I think our ideas were basically not where money was going to come from, but what did we need as a church. And so we, in trying to think about this, we began to establish that we needed so many Sunday school rooms, and we needed so many seats, and we needed this and the other, and we decided we would like to have a place where we could have socials and this kind of thing. So we recommended then to the congregation that we do a building, that we try to put together a building plan. And that's really what the recommendation was, I think, from the study committee, as I recall it.
Mm-hmm.
Alice may be able to correct me, and being the historian that he is.
Well, for those of you who haven't figured out or viewing this is a meeting of what we put together, the original building committee for the Wesley Methodist Church. And today present we have Tom Stroud and Joe Harvey, Alvis Waite, Reverend Wright Culpepper, Vernon Robinson, Joel Willis, and Virginia Hay. We're here in Virginia's house right now. It's April 20th, 1994. We're starting a little roundtable discussion on what the beginnings of the Architectural Review Committee were as far as putting our church together. Mr. Harvey just started talking about his feelings at the beginning, but you mentioned something before we turned the camera on, Mr. Harvey, about your feelings about accepting the position as chairman of that committee.
Oh, as I said, I had great fears about being chairman of the committee. And even when the study committee had made their recommendation, then I was asked to serve on the building committee. And good gracious alive, that was a responsibility I didn't feel I could take. But
you did.
I did.
Praise the Lord.
Amen.
With the Lord's guidance, I did well, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Not I particularly, but just in being able to chair the committee and handle or talk to so many different people and get all of their inputs. We had such a great group. As I mentioned on the study committee, we had experiences from all over. And on this building committee, then there were many, many hard decisions that came about, and people made these decisions, and they persevered. We had differences. I think Alice has already alluded to the fact that we didn't have any arguments and disagreements. We had some disagreements, but they were friendly, and we were able to resolve some of the different things. We had so much input. I can remember that Virginia Hay said she wanted above everything else for that to look churchy. I remember.
Well, Virginia, could you expand on that?
Well, I don't know. It just seems I've seen so many very contemporary modern looking buildings. I guess I'm old fashioned. I just want to look like a church. With a stick.
No, our committee, we were really talking about meeting rooms and not a sanctuary, and we were talking about Sunday school rooms, and we went along with, I think, some of the more modern ways that churches have started with meeting rooms that served as social halls as well as a sanctuary. And Bishop Robertson, one of the things that he particularly wanted was to be able to look out and see the wonderful oak trees that were right outside. And then you see our windows at the top of our meeting room, if you would call it that. What was the name?
Celebration room.
Celebration room. wisest things that we did was bring in a good architect and good consultant architect, I think. Let me shut up at this time.
Joe, I remember one of my first impressions, because I came in '88, and so the group was several months in the process. In fact, the design had already been made, and it was time to go to the working drawings by the time I came in. But one of the things that impressed me was that the commitment of this committee. You met on Friday nights, which to me was an awful time to have any kind of meeting, but there was almost 100% involvement. And you were in Nashville most of the time and flying in to chair this meeting a good bit of the time. And it's hard to get people to go 2 blocks to a meeting sometimes to plan something, but there was something about the spirit of this group that you knew that you were a part of something that was more than just going to be the average church. There was commitment to building something that was going to make a statement and make an impact. And I was just so appreciative of the loyalty of this total group in that work.
Michael, one thing I think you ought to remember, the very place we are right now, for 2.5 years, was the church park. All the groups who had Sunday school class meetings and so forth came right here. I remember coming here for many socials and other things too. Virginia Hay opened her house for us and made us welcome. We did not have any other place to go. In Virginia, I want to express my gratitude to you for what you did in helping this church get started. You were great. Thank you very much.
In
What a
fact,
great blessing to have y'all all come.
the first meetings, if I remember correctly, were held here in this living room.
Oh, really?
I believe so. The bishop, I remember, was in here with us, Bishop Robinson.
I want to say one thing I think we did. Of course, we had a fine architect from Georgia, but I don't know who it was that suggested that we have our consultant, Roger Patterson.
Bishop Frank Robinson.
Bishop Roger Robinson. And he really gave us the new ideas, like that wonderful gathering space as we go in, where people can gather before and after church. And I think that has been a tremendous benefit. And of course, I think our room that's supposed to be just a end up being a dining hall too, is a worshipful room. Was it Eva Knievel that suggested the arches or Knievel? I don't know, but those arches add a great deal.
I remember one thing Bishop Robinson kept saying, that he wanted it to be lofty, wanted it to be something that would draw our attention towards the heavens, I think. I don't know exactly how he said it, but I remember that.
I think the arches deal was in Roger's plan, but Elba, we were hung up on the roof design, the outside, the way it would look, and it's her suggestion that you do the present.
Yes. I knew she had some.
Since Bishop Robinson has been mentioned, I would like to say I think it was Bishop Robinson's dynamic preaching and commitment to having a new church on the north end of the island helped us to get a good start. Because I can name some people, and you can too, who were drawn to our church through his preaching. Of course, he didn't, he couldn't serve but a year, but that year gave us a good beginning. And I think how Reese was right there with him the whole time. And I Wright Culpepper followed him. He's given us good leadership. So we're still moving, we don't want to stop.
But Bishop Robinson that year also, every new person that came to that church, he personally visited. And to think a man who had been bishop to come back and be the wonderful pastor that he was, he just, I think, was just
He was so loving, and that started our church. That's
we can't say enough about Bishop Robinson.
I think there's so many things that were involved in the very beginning that made this church a go from the very beginning. Was number one, that we had the support of St. Simon's United Methodist Church. And they were going to be the mother church, and we were going to be the little charge outside. And that was wonderful. We had a bishop to be our first pastor. No other Methodist church that I have ever heard of had a bishop to be the first pastor of the church. So that was good. we had Alfred Jones that had the vision years before we even thought of making sure that there was land provided so that we could be where the Wesleys had walked. And so that was a plus. We had everything. The island is growing and continues to grow. So everything was false. It was on the launching pad to be inevitable. It was God's wishes. That's where we started.
Well, listen, I would like to thank this committee for seeing to it that we just didn't stop. We went ahead and built a complete plan so we could have a good Sunday school, we could have good church services, and I'm glad we were willing to go that step beyond that, even though we had to go in debt a little more. So I do not believe we could have done anything less than we did.
Well, the reason we could do that was because of that good financial campaign, and we went over our goals, and Tom Stroud shared that. I'd like for him to give us some of his feelings about that.
And first of all, when we started with that, in that I felt like that we were too ambitious, but at the same time I wanted us to be ambitious. So we had set a goal of around $400,000 to $425,000 to pledge in 3 years. And we had Bill and Alma, who helped me with the name, Irvin, to come and be our leader through this campaign, which he came. And Bill, of course, loved the church. He was a South Georgia retired minister, is a South Georgia retired minister, and it's been a help. But the campaign was most successful. We pledged $750,000 from a $400,000 goal. So that started us. But there was excitement within the people. And they were the ones that really motivated us.
Absolutely.
I like to recall, at that time I was chairman of the Administrative Council. I worked very closely with Bishop Robinson, and I was his chauffeur also. We were meeting at some point, probably at his house, and in preparation for the fundraising portion to start. And he said, "We need a chairman." And I said, "Well, yeah." And he said, "I'd like for Tom Stroud to be the chairman." And I said, "Well, why don't we go ask him?" So Frank made an appointment, and I went with Frank to Tom's office. First time I'd ever been in the office, Frank, Tom. And we sat down, and he said, "What can I do?" And Bishop Robinson said, "I'd like you to be chairman of our campaign." And Tom did not hesitate. Did him and Hall, he said, "I'll do it." And but you have to. And that was the spirit of the church at that time, where nobody gave a reason why they couldn't do something. And I thought that was, we didn't know what we were going to do if Tom said no. Because we hadn't talked about anybody else.
You just knew you were so safe.
Tom asked me if I would help him.
That's right.
I did. And I found the people that I saw loyal, supportive, and made it possible for us to go beyond what we did. And Tom knows what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir.
And the church members pledged too. And I was very proud of all our members for what they did. And what I'm sure, and my little grandson said, what they're going to do.
I recall some of our committee meetings when we had about pretty much developed what the building would look like. And we struggled with the churchiness look. But from the very beginning, I think we all realized that we didn't need a sanctuary. We needed a building that could have programming. And we could use a building for the sanctuary purposes until we could do the sanctuary and do it right. But from the very beginning, the committee realized that we needed classroom space and social space to be able to build the church. And that we would have made a mistake if we built the sanctuary first. But we couldn't have Sunday school or any other programming. But I remember, y'all recall this too, and I'm not going to say names, but there were 3 members of the church who really weren't happy with what we had done and had asked to come and address the committee. And I think one of them was there just because he really didn't want to be there, but he came. And I remember right before the meeting, Bishop Robertson went outside of the cannon room and spoke to him, or spoke to all 3 of them. And they came back in, and we heard them, and they heard us, and they went on. I think probably not as pleased, but we had gone to a point where we couldn't stop, and the committee felt very good about congregation did too, because they supported it 100% when the time came to vote for it. But,
And a lot of people compliment us.
right, and that was where they had not had the privilege, I guess, or the experience of dealing with ground up. What do you need to start the church? Yeah, a lot of people wanted us to build a sanctuary with high steps going up and big steeple, but we didn't need that, and that'll come later. But what we needed was what we had now to plant some seeds, really. And, but the committee was very much together, I think, from the very beginning on, what we needed in terms of programming, facilities.
Joe, one thing that impressed me is there were about 55 of us who came out. It wasn't from St. Simon's Church. I mean, number may not be.
That was the first Sunday when we all went out.
But one thing that impressed me all the way through, especially in the early beginning, was the enthusiasm of the people. And they were excited. I remember that on Saturday, how many people came out to help and to work. But they kept this enthusiasm through right on through the program. But I felt like people were impressed, and they wanted to give leadership, and they wanted the church. I wanted the Sunday school building adequate for worship. And thanks to Joe Harvey, Joe said, let's do it. Do the whole plan. I remember Joe in some meetings, we were going to cut it off.
That children's wing just was a great blessing.
We were gonna hold that in, as I recall, and we were not going to complete it. And we made the decision to go out on a limb and secure the finances and build it. But we felt that if we did not attract the young people who had children and we couldn't take care of them, then our church had no room to grow. And for this reason, then we completed that building, and I think it was a wise thing to do. Our church is paying off today, and it really is.
In that same plan, we were not gonna glass in, the tower, that area.
That's true.
But in that same meeting, I think we decided to go ahead with that too. All blessed.
We'll be glad to receive a check from all of y'all today if you'd like to help us pay for that. But I think you're right. I think the spirit was, we're not thinking in terms of finances, we're thinking in terms of ministry. And if you do that and go and act in faith that we're doing what God's called us to do, if we're not moving in the direction God wants us to be moving, He can stop us anywhere along the way. And throughout the whole process, I think He's opened doors and blessed us for the efforts that we've attempted to do to bring glory to His name. And a lot of lives have been touched because of those decisions made that we struggled with in that meeting.
Right, has already said something about, the loyalty and the commitment of this committee, and I just want to add something to that. I too have really been impressed with all of the time that was given. Last night I just took out that 5 minutes and just flipped through it to count them. We had 20 announced. Joe would send out a notice and say the meeting will be such and such a time, such and such a place, and we were there. The committee nearly 100% every time. And these weren't just 1 hour meetings. They lasted 2 and 3 hours, and I counted 20 sets of minutes in that 2.5 year period, and that didn't count, the little call sessions after a service and when just one decision had to be made, or the subcommittee meetings. I mean, this committee literally spent hundreds of hours. I mean, it's individuals, hundreds of hours in planning and implementing.
Part of that because the chairman didn't know how to cut off some of the
No, the chairman was patient and was willing, to let everybody have their say.
Well, I think it was necessary.
Yeah, it was.
I think a lot of good things came out of that.
And what I want to say, and I'm sure you all agree with me, what a blessing and a joy it has been to start a new church.
Oh, yes.
I've been a church for one church practically all my life, and then it got settled into one and really didn't want to come. But I thank the Lord every day I did, and it's just been a joy.
Yeah, we had to laugh at Virginia because she said, well, I'll go help you start. In fact, I give her credit in St. Simon's for selling, it was a soft sell, but she sold the congregation on being the mother church.
I agree on that.
Yeah,
Y'all, I don't remember.
and she said, you know, well, I'll go help you get started, but I'm not gonna move my membership. You're one of the first ones to come on.
You remember, I told you about coming out there.
Yeah, you're the reason I went, thank you.
Well, don't you think that the committee, part of the time, most of the time, we were keeping the congregation always informed. Everybody had a part. We tried to let everybody feed into the committee, what their ideas were and what their dreams were, and try to put it all together. But I remember so well, I don't remember anybody ever saying no. You know, no matter what you asked back in those days, everybody was willing to pitch in whatever it took, and let's do it. And I'll say one more thing about the money, and then we'll change. I'll not mention that anymore. But we had a lot of sizable gifts that came in from people that were not members of our church. Some Macon people did outstandingly well to help us in that initial $750,000, and we did. And I assume by the time the building this phase was completed, we had what, $1.5 million involved?
Pretty close.
I think it was. It really grew. And it proved, Joe, under your leadership, that we made the right decisions to go ahead and do as much as we did when we did.
Well, that wasn't my leadership, it was the Lord.
Well, that's right.
The Lord would use me.
Now, that's in the past, and we're grateful for it. But Bishop Moore used to have a saying, roll up your sleeves and keep going, you remember that?
Yes. Yeah.
And that's, even though we're not a committee anymore, but that's to encourage our church to try to pay this debt off. You still have a large debt in the bank. And let's do more than interest. Let's try to make some payments on the principal of that and get this thing paid off. I tell you, it really concerns me about that.
Me too, and I think we need to talk about it now, you know. People may not want to talk about money, but it's a very necessary thing for every phase of our life, and the church is certainly no different. So I certainly think, and of course I wasn't here during the campaign, but I talked to people, they didn't realize they were supposed to make a pledge to the building fund when we took up our money, so.
Well, I think we're on the threshold of another liftoff, and begin to see what can actually happen.
We do have now a development committee. Joel's chairing that committee and looking at both ways to attack the debt and also to begin the beginning stages like you were doing way back when you were having a study committee, I guess. And so the work continues on, and we are making payments to principal. We're not just paying to interest, but there's a lot of interest that's being paid, and the more we can attack that principal, you're exactly right.
Tom is chair of a task force subcommittee from the planning development that's looking specifically at reducing debt and ways to do it. And I agree with you. We've talked about this in our meetings. And this, I think this is just an extension of what's gone on for the last 6 years, 7 years, that we need to educate our congregation. But there's a lot of people who are members now who were not involved in the experience of the new church, and have come into a situation, just kind of get in their seat and go, but probably aren't educated enough to know that the $700,000 note, and we've got to get that under control before we can go on to bigger and better things. So it's Tom's leadership, I think, in that task force, you'll see something coming out in the near future in terms of education, and maybe even recommendations of what we can do. So he may be calm.
Tom did so well in this first fundraising campaign, and I have no doubt that he will be successful and will make Wesley even more successful.
Well, I appreciate all those kind of words.
I hope you'll get the support with the work.
That's right, I remind you.
Go ahead and put him on the spot now.
But one thing that, from a historical thing, we want to make sure that we get on tape is that during the days that we were heavy involved. Sea Island Company was supporting us too. We cannot forget Bill Edenfield, who is landscape architect, I assume, for Sea Island Company, was sitting with us constantly through our plans and trying to. We called on him so many, many times, though he was not a committee. I don't know if he ever missed a committee meeting to meet with us. And Sea Island gave their blessings to Bill to make sure that he was with us. So there's a lot of things, and I'm sure there are a lot of people that we haven't thanked that really had a part with this committee that we really.
Well, you know, one area we haven't even started to talk about today is weather out. And Ken Evans and Chuck Birdsler and the relationship which we had with them, which was a whole new concept, I think, to all of us to go that route and have a company just come in and take over with the construction of the building. What a joy that turned out to be for us.
Ken Evans said that he had, in all the experiences he had in building churches, he never worked with a committee like ours. That usually there's fights and misunderstandings and a lot of miscommunication, and he said that this could not have gone any better in terms of the time that we say build it, and they do it, and they do, exactly what was planned out.
That probably had a lot to do with it, that they did a good job too.
Well, nothing really changed, minor things, but nothing major. And he said they never had an experience in all of his experience of building churches.
They put a good man on the job, Joe, too, to carry it out. He even came to our church, and taught Sunday school.
And has come back from time to time when he was had the opportunity. He came back and worked with us. Chuck was as committed to that church as anybody. He moved his trailer out on the lot and lived there and supervised it day and night.
And shouldn't we mention that that company was a division of it that built only churches?
That's right.
So they were experienced in church building.
Just built them all over the country, but they brought that concept in where you don't get a general contractor to bid and then you decide on your general contractor. We had the opportunity to choose our subcontractors, and we didn't like who was being recommended. We could make a shift and pretty much tailor it to who we wanted to build a church.
It was a wide open concept that we had nearly full control. The only thing that they did, they didn't say it's going to cost X number of dollars. They said we'll guarantee it'll not go over X number of dollars. And it will cost you so much for every dollar that we spend, as a fee. But it was a new concept to most all of us in the building committee. And we wrestled with that for a long time, that we were not exactly sure what it was going to cost. They didn't come in with the very lowest of bids. They came in with the possibility of being low, I think, but giving us more control of the subcontractors and making changes as we went along was easier under that scenario than any other thing.
I think the church will be, in my opinion, the greatest church in the world, Methodist church in the world. And that it will be not necessarily the largest, but it will be one that people that are Methodist oriented will come to see, because this is definitely where the Wesleys have walked. And this is the beginning. And with a Bishop Moore that had a dream, a Bishop Robinson that was our first pastor, and a future bishop in Wright Culpepper, we stand to do nothing except succeed.
He's Dr. Pepper now.
I know he's Dr. Pepper. But we have great things in store. And I'm sure it's a vision the Lord has that our minds cannot even conceive of what shall be.
Tom, I was in Bill Jones III's office recently, and I was interested in hearing him say, I'm interested in us building a sanctuary. I said, Bill, we've got to get rid of some debt first. But he said, I want to do that, and I want to move on to the sanctuary. And he said, I want to be on that committee to help build it.
Well,
So I was very much encouraged by that.
Is when will our new sanctuary break ground? Right, you're first.
Thank you, Michael, for asking that question. We are mentioned earlier, we have organized what we're calling a planning and development committee, and that is not just looking at the building, but it's also looking at what's taking place around the church. There's a new school being built and the new subdivisions that are popping up. We have laid a strong foundation. We're in the right place at the right time. And I'm in hopes that as this planning and development committee has been meeting this year, now several times here in the early part of 1994, I really hope that by the end of this year that they can be far enough along to where they can make a recommendation just like the study committee did. So we need to be moving on with this. And then hopefully maybe by either charge conference of this year or early part of 1995, we can be looking towards appointing the building committee. And maybe it won't be that we're going to be building it right that quick, but we will be able to be ready when we get the finances in order. I think you're going to be looking at a financial campaign in the fall, spring, maybe, that will be addressing both the debt and future building. I'm optimistic, thinking that we can do it that quick. There may be some here that would say it's a little bit longer, but this is an optimistic group, and they did unheard of things before, and they shall do them again, I think.
I guess I'm conservative, but I want to concentrate on paying the debt. Of course, we want a sanctuary, but let's pay the debt so we can get a sanctuary.
Well, it's been brought out in our committee, the debt reduction is that, let's don't push the sanctuary and make a mistake. When we get ready to do it, let's do it right. And we can't do it right until we get the debt where we can handle that. But, I would hope that by 1997 we'll break the ground. That would be significant, 10 years from the time the church started. I thought earlier, several years ago, that we would have a sanctuary under construction by now, or 1995, but I think 97 would be a reachable goal to start construction.
I'd like to raise this question. How far down should the debt be reduced before we begin? Should we have a debt, 200,000, 300,000, or should we have it paid off?
The rule of thumb that we used before is that when we got it down to 500,000, that we would begin to turn up the heat a little bit. And
What is it down to?
we're under 700 now. It's no, the total debt is over 7, but
It's
around 700.
700 on the church.
100,000 on the party.
And how many members do we have? I mean, that pay a pledge, not 500.
Well, no, we've got 500 members, and we've
A lot
got
of them have moved.
but we've got strong support, and we continue to get support from some of those that have moved away. But it's not a lot of those that have moved have transferred their membership on. And one of the things I like about the fact, well, because you don't necessarily get to see that information, but when we get the transfer letters, they transfer into Methodist churches. And that means that in some way that this experience has been a positive experience for them, and they go looking for Methodist churches. But in this day and age, people church shop, and denomination doesn't mean a lot. So it means a lot to us, I think, to say, hey, these are people that are going on with the mission that we've tried to communicate. And I'm pleased to see that.
Right, is absolutely right about it. People move on, but sometimes they're attracted to the church. I remember when this church had 200 members, we did a survey. 85 of them were not Methodists in the beginning, but they joined our church. And there's been a program of education through the right to teach them more about our church. And I think it's good that people who come here from different parts of the country are attracted to the church.
Yeah, our congregation is, I'd say 50-50, but 50% is probably United Methodist background, but of the other 50%, we've got Roman Catholic, we've got Baptists, Presbyterians, Episcopalians, people who were nothing and have come and made profession of faith. And so we're a good recruiter for the United Methodist principles.
Yes, you've been a great influence, particularly on young people. We have so many young people.
Well, not just me. this group here has been a great influence, and a lot of people have been great influences on our people. People come because they know somebody, and they're invited to come. And I can't invite the whole island. You invite who you know, and they come, and they stay. And it continues to grow. I really don't think we've seen our growth yet. I think we're on the threshold of what is yet to be. I think all of these past several years have been just foundational work for what's to come.
Michael, you didn't get your question answered. When do you think we'll begin the church? Or we just let everybody give a number and cut it off at that?
Well, Joel started. He stuck his neck out first.
97.
I don't have any idea.
Okay, that's fair. Vernon, you're
I'm
net.
2000.
You're 2000.
I'll go with 97, but I'm
Okay.
going to push you a little bit quicker than that.
Okay. Alvis?
I'd say 97.
I'm gonna be optimistic and say in 1997. I think that's a good year.
I would agree with that.
Well, the consensus, well, if this committee has any say-so, I think we'll start in 1997. Thank you very,
We're gonna call for an organizational meeting just as soon as you shut the camera off.
well, no, it just was called for. It's on tape.
Not of this group. I haven't had an organizational meeting with her.
I probably should have been more politically oriented and diplomatic and deferred to our development chairman over here, Mr. Willis, who had already said 1997, and I made his statement. If that's what I
Well, thank you very much.